Jake Morrison stared at the security screen and felt his stomach drop. The main hub of Kepler-7 mining station was packed with 12-foot-tall monsters that looked like walking tanks. Their dark green skin had thick plates of armor growing right out of their bodies. Each one carried weapons that could cut through steel like paper. The Vorthak had been there for 6 hours now. Their leader stood in the center of the hub with his arms crossed. War Chief Thane was bigger than the rest, with scars covering his face and red eyes that seemed to burn with anger. He had not moved an inch since he planted himself in front of the main power controls. Morrison rubbed his tired eyes. He had been station commander for 3 years, but nothing had prepared him for this. The hub was the heart of the entire station. Every supply ship, every transport, every emergency vehicle had to pass through that area. Now it was blocked by the most dangerous creatures in the galaxy. Amy Rodriguez walked up behind him. She was his second in command and usually stayed calm during problems. But today her face was tight with worry. "Sir, the Etherians tried talking to them again," she said. "Same result. The Vorthak just stared at them until they left." Morrison nodded. The Etherians were tall, thin aliens who looked like they were made of light. They were the best diplomats in known space. If they could not talk to the Vorthak, nobody could. "What about the Nexus units?" Morrison asked. "They ran probability calculations for 2 hours," Rodriguez said. "Every scenario ended with the Vorthak refusing to move. The machines finally gave up and rolled away." Morrison watched the screen again. The Nexus units were robots that could solve almost any problem with math and logic. They had built half the stations in this sector. But even they had no answer for the Vorthak. Pete Johnson's voice came over the comm system. He was the maintenance chief and sounded scared. "Commander Morrison, we have a big problem down here. The life support systems need repairs right now, but all the main controls are in the hub. If we can't get to them in the next few hours, we're going to lose air and heat for the whole station." Morrison closed his eyes. 2,000 people lived on Kepler-7. Without life support, they would all die. "How long can we last?" Morrison asked. "Maybe 8 hours if we're lucky," Johnson said. "But that's pushing it. The backup systems are already working overtime." Rodriguez pulled up another screen. It showed 3 colonies that depended on supplies from Kepler-7. Without the mining station, those colonies would run out of food and medicine in 2 weeks. "We could call for military backup," Rodriguez said. "But the nearest fleet is 3 weeks away." Morrison shook his head. 3 weeks was too long. Everyone would be dead by then. On the screen, he watched as a group of Zephyrians approached the Vorthak. The Zephyrians were small blue creatures who worked together like a hive. They were great at convincing other species to cooperate. 50 of them surrounded Thane and started making clicking sounds. The war chief looked down at them for a moment. Then he let out a roar that shook the camera. The Zephyrians scattered like leaves in a storm. "They're not even trying to hurt anyone," Morrison said. "Look at their body language." Rodriguez squinted at the screen. "What do you mean?" Morrison pointed at the Vorthak warriors. "They're not in attack positions, they're just standing there, like they're waiting for something." It was true. The Vorthak had their weapons ready, but they were not pointing them at anyone. They stood in a circle around Thane, but their eyes kept scanning the area. They looked like guards, not invaders. Kate Williams came running into the security center. She was the communications officer and usually worked the night shift. Her face was red from running. "Commander, I've been listening to Vorthak transmissions," she said, breathing hard. "They're talking to their homeworld every hour. The messages are encrypted, but I can tell they're asking for instructions about something." Morrison frowned. "Instructions about what?" "I don't know," Williams said. "But they keep using the same word over and over. It translates to something, like test or trial in Galactic Standard. Test." Morrison stared at the screen again. The Vorthak were not just blocking the hub. They were waiting for something to happen. Ben Thompson, the chief engineer, appeared on another screen. His face was covered in grease and sweat. "Commander, I've been trying to reroute life support around the hub," he said. "It's not working. The main systems are too integrated. We need direct access to the controls or we're all going to suffocate." Morrison felt the weight of command pressing down on him. 2,000 lives depended on his decisions. 3 colonies needed supplies, and the most dangerous warriors in the galaxy were blocking the only way to save everyone. He had seen Vorthak in action before. During the border wars, a single Vorthak warrior had destroyed an entire platoon of human soldiers. They were faster than they looked, stronger than seemed possible, and their armor could stop most weapons. But something was different here. These Vorthak were not acting like conquerors. They were acting like they were following orders. Orders that involved waiting for something specific to happen. Morrison made a decision. He needed to understand what the Vorthak wanted, and he needed to understand it fast before everyone on the station died. "Rodriguez, get me everything we have on Vorthak culture," he said. "Williams, keep monitoring those transmissions. Thompson, keep working on those repairs but don't take any risks. Johnson, how much time do we really have?" 6 hours. Johnson's voice came back. "Maybe 7 if we're very lucky." Morrison looked at the screen one more time. War Chief Thane had not moved at all. He stood like a statue, waiting for something that only he understood. The clock was ticking, and Morrison had no idea what the Vorthak wanted from them. Dr. Lisa Carter burst through the security center doors carrying a tablet computer and 3 data chips. Her lab coat was wrinkled, and she had not slept in 12 hours, but her eyes were bright with excitement. "Commander Morrison, I found something important," she said, setting the tablet on his desk. "I've been studying Vorthak behavior patterns for the past 6 hours. What we're seeing here is not normal territorial aggression." Morrison looked up from the status reports. The life support situation was getting worse. They had maybe 5 hours left before people started dying. "What do you mean?" he asked. Carter pulled up a file on her tablet. Showed pictures of Vorthak warriors from different planets and situations. "Look at these images," she said. "When Vorthak take territory by force, they spread out and patrol the area. They mark boundaries with their scent. They show dominance by destroying things." Morrison studied the pictures. In every image, the Vorthak were moving around, breaking objects or fighting other creatures. "But our Vorthak are not doing any of that," Carter continued. "They're standing in formation. They're waiting. This behavior matches something else, entirely." "What?" Morrison asked. "A recognition ceremony," Carter said. "In Vorthak culture, when they meet a species they consider worthy of respect, they perform a test. They block an important area and wait to see how the other species responds." Rodriguez walked over to listen. Her face was grim. "Doctor, are you saying they're testing us?" she asked. "Maybe," Carter said. "But I need more data to be sure. The problem is that most of our information about Vorthak culture comes from military encounters. We don't have much about their peaceful behaviors." Ben Thompson's voice came over the comm system again. He sounded frustrated and tired. "Commander, I've tried everything I can think of," he said. "The life support systems are too complex to bypass. We need to access the main controls in the hub. There's no other way." Morrison felt the pressure building. Every minute that passed meant less time to save everyone on the station. "How long would the repairs take if we could get to the controls?" Morrison asked. "About 20 minutes, Thompson said. "But someone would have to stay in the hub the whole time. The systems are too delicate to leave alone." 20 minutes in a room full of Vorthak warriors. Morrison had seen what those creatures could do. They could tear a human apart in seconds. Kate Williams looked up from her communication station. She had been listening to Vorthak transmissions all morning. "Commander, I'm picking up something new," she said. "The Vorthak are using a different frequency now. The messages are shorter but more frequent." "What are they saying?" Morrison asked. "I can't translate most of it," Williams said. "But they keep mentioning humans specifically, not other species, just humans." Morrison felt a chill run down his spine. Why were the Vorthak talking about humans? Dr. Carter looked up from her tablet with surprise. "That's very interesting," she said. "Commander, may I ask you something? Has anyone tried to approach the Vorthak directly today?" "Several species have tried," Rodriguez said. "The Etherians sent their best diplomats. The Nexus units tried logical negotiation. The Zephyrians attempted group persuasion. All failed." But has any human tried? Carter asked. Morrison thought about it. Most of the station's human crew was working on emergency repairs or evacuation procedures. Nobody had actually gone to talk to the Vorthak face to face. No, Morrison said. We've been coordinating from here. Carter nodded and made notes on her tablet. Commander, I need to check something in the archives, she said. Can you give me access to the historical records? Specifically First Contact. Reports between humans and Vorthak? Morrison entered his command codes and gave Carter access to the station's database. She started searching through files that were hundreds of years old. Meanwhile, Pete Johnson appeared on the main screen. His maintenance uniform was soaked with sweat. Commander, we have another problem, he said. The agricultural bay is losing atmospheric pressure. If we can't fix it soon, we'll lose all the food crops. That means no food for anyone, even if we solve the life support issue. Morrison closed his eyes. The situation was getting worse by the hour. First the life support, now the food supply. Soon they would have to start evacuating people to the escape pods. How many people can the escape pods hold? Morrison asked Rodriguez. About 800, she said quietly. That leaves 1,200 people with nowhere to go. Morrison had commanded space stations before, but never in a situation like this. He was responsible for every life on Kepler-7. The thought of choosing who lived and who died made him sick. Danny Chen walked into the security center. He was young, maybe 25, and worked in maintenance. He usually fixed broken pipes and faulty air filters, but today he looked scared. Commander Morrison, sir, he said. Chief Johnson sent me to report on the backup generators. They're running at maximum capacity. If they fail, we lose everything immediately. Morrison nodded. Another system failing. Another countdown timer running out. Danny, how are the crew holding up? Morrison asked. They're scared, sir, Danny said honestly. But they're still working. Nobody's given up yet. That was something at least. The human crew was staying calm under pressure. But Morrison wondered how long that would last. Dr. Carter suddenly looked up from her research with wide eyes. Commander, I found something, she said. I found records of the first human contact with Vorthak forces. It was 200 years ago, during the exploration of the Titan system. What happened? Morrison asked. Captain Steve Adams was leading a survey mission when his ship encountered a Vorthak warfleet, Carter said, reading from the screen. The Vorthak had blockaded an entire star system. No one could get through. Morrison leaned forward. This sounded familiar. How did Adams handle it? He asked. Carter read more of the report. Her voice got quieter as she continued. According to this, Adams tried diplomacy first. Then he tried military threats, nothing worked. But then something changed. The report says Adams walked onto the Vorthak flagship alone and gave their commander a direct order. What kind of order? Rodriguez asked. The report doesn't say exactly, Carter said. But whatever Adams said, it worked. The Vorthak fleet moved aside and let the human ships pass. After that, they treated Adams with something called command recognition. Morrison stared at the screen showing War Chief Thane. The massive warrior had not moved in hours. He stood like he was waiting for something specific, something that only a human could provide. Danny Chen stood nervously by the door after giving his report. Morrison was about to dismiss him when the young man cleared his throat. Commander, sir, Danny said. There's something else. My grandfather fought in the Titan Wars. He used to tell me stories about the Vorthak. Morrison looked up. The Titan Wars had happened 50 years ago, before most current records were digitized. Any first-hand information could be valuable. What kind of stories? Morrison asked. Danny shifted his weight from foot to foot. He was not used to talking. To senior officers, my grandfather was a sergeant in the 45th Infantry, Danny said. His unit got trapped on Titan III when Vorthak forces surrounded their base. Everyone thought they were going to die. Dr. Carter stopped reading her research and listened carefully. What happened? She asked. The Vorthak had them surrounded for 3 days, Danny continued. No food, no water, no ammunition left. The aliens could have killed them any time they wanted, but they just waited outside the perimeter. Morrison felt his heart beat faster. This sounded very familiar. Then what? Morrison asked. On the third day, my grandfather's commanding officer walked out of the base alone, Danny said. He walked right up to the biggest Vorthak warrior and told him to move his troops back so the humans could evacuate their wounded. Rodriguez raised her eyebrows. He just gave them an order? Yes, ma'am, Danny said. My grandfather said the officer didn't ask permission or try to negotiate. He just looked the Vorthak in the eye and told him what needed to happen. And it worked? Dr. Carter asked. Danny nodded. The Vorthak commander stepped aside and ordered his troops to clear a path. My grandfather said it was the strangest thing he ever saw. These creatures who had been hunting humans for weeks suddenly treated them with respect. Morrison stared at the security screen. War Chief Thane stood in the same position he had held for hours. But now Morrison noticed something different about the alien's posture. He was not aggressive or defensive. He was waiting. Dr. Carter pulled up more files on her tablet. Her fingers moved quickly across the screen. Danny, do you remember any other details from your grandfather's stories? She asked. He said the Vorthak called humans something special. Danny replied. Some word in their language that meant something. Like, the ones who command in darkness, or those who order when hope is lost. Carter found what she was looking for and gasped. Commander, look at this, she said, turning her tablet toward Morrison. I found archived footage from the New Horizons. First contact with the Vorthak, Captain Steve Adams's encounter. Morrison watched the grainy video footage. It showed a human captain walking onto an alien ship filled with Vorthak warriors. The captain was clearly outnumbered and outgunned, but he walked straight up to the Vorthak leader without hesitation. The audio was poor, but Morrison could hear Adams speaking in a clear, calm voice. He was not pleading or negotiating. He was giving orders. Fascinating, Carter said. Look at the Vorthak body language in this footage. The moment Adams starts giving direct commands, their entire demeanor changes. They go from aggressive to attentive. Tony Martinez, the security chief, walked into the center. He had been monitoring the Vorthak through security cameras all day. Commander, I need to report something strange, Martinez said. The Vorthak have been watching our crew members through the security cameras, but they're not watching everyone equally. What do you mean? Morrison asked. They follow the human crew members with their eyes, Martinez said. When an Etherian or a Zephyrian walks past the hub, the Vorthak barely notice. But when a human appears on any screen, they all turn to look. Morrison felt pieces of a puzzle clicking together in his mind. The Vorthak were not randomly occupying the hub. They were conducting some kind of test or ceremony, and they were specifically interested in human behavior. Ben Thompson's voice came over the comm system again. He sounded desperate. Commander, I hate to push, but we're down to 4 hours of life support, he said. The backup generators are running too hot. If they fail, we'll have maybe 30 minutes before people start suffocating. Morrison looked around the security center. Dr. Carter was reading through more historical files. Rodriguez was coordinating evacuation procedures. Martinez was watching security feeds. Williams was monitoring alien communications. Everyone was doing their job professionally despite the crisis. But Morrison realized that their calm efficiency might be exactly what the Vorthak were looking for. Dr. Carter, you said the Vorthak perform recognition ceremonies, Morrison said. What exactly are they trying to recognize? Carter looked up from her research. Based on these historical accounts, they seem to be testing for a specific type of leadership, not diplomatic leadership or military leadership, something else. What kind of leadership? Rodriguez asked. Command authority in impossible situations, Carter said. The ability to make hard decisions when everyone else is paralyzed by fear or uncertainty. Morrison thought about Captain Adams walking onto a Vorthak ship. He thought about Danny's grandfather's commanding officer facing down an army. In both cases, humans had succeeded not by fighting or negotiating, but by taking charge when the situation seemed hopeless. Kate Williams suddenly stood up at her communication station. Commander, the Vorthak transmissions just changed again, she said. They're not asking their homeworld for instructions anymore. Now they're reporting on something. What are they reporting? Morrison asked. Williams listened to her equipment. for a moment. I can't translate it exactly, but it sounds like they're describing human behavior patterns. They're taking notes on how we respond to crisis situations. Morrison walked to the window that overlooked the main hub. Far below, he could see War Chief Thane standing motionless among his warriors. The alien's red eyes seemed to be looking directly up at the security center. "They're not occupying our station," Morrison said quietly. "They're studying us." Dr. Carter nodded. "And based on these historical precedents, they're waiting for a human to demonstrate the leadership quality they respect most." "Which is what?" Rodriguez asked. Morrison understood now. He had seen it in the historical footage and heard it in Danny's grandfather's story. The Vorthak respected humans who could give clear, direct orders in situations where everyone else would panic or hesitate. "They're waiting for someone to take command," Morrison said. "Not to ask permission or negotiate terms, to simply tell them what needs to happen and expect them to comply." The room fell silent except for the hum of failing life support systems. Everyone was looking at Morrison. Outside, 2,000 people were running out of air. 3 colonies were waiting for supplies that might never come, and the most dangerous warriors in the galaxy were standing guard over the only solution to their problems. Morrison realized that the Vorthak had been waiting for him all along. Morrison stared out the window at War Chief Thane for a long moment. The massive alien stood like a statue, but Morrison could feel those burning red eyes watching him. The weight of command had never felt heavier. "Commander," Rodriguez said, quietly. "What are you thinking?" Morrison turned back to his team. Dr. Carter was still reading historical files. Martinez was monitoring security feeds. Williams was listening to alien communications. Danny Chen stood near the door, waiting to see what would happen next. "I'm thinking that we're out of options," Morrison said. "The life support is failing. The food systems are breaking down. We can't evacuate everyone, and the only way to fix any of it requires getting past those Vorthak." Ben Thompson's voice crackled over the comm system. He sounded exhausted. "Commander, I need to be honest with you," Thompson said. "The main generators just started overheating. We might not even have 4 hours. If those generators fail, the whole station goes dark. Immediately." Morrison felt his stomach clench. No power meant no air recycling, no heat, no gravity controls. Everyone would die within minutes. "How long do we have?" Morrison asked. "Maybe 2 hours if we're very lucky," Thompson said. "I'm doing everything I can, but the systems are too damaged. We need to shut down and reset everything from the main hub." Morrison looked at his team again. These people had been following his orders all day without question. They trusted him to find a solution. But every solution led back to the same problem: the Vorthak blocking the hub. Dr. Carter looked up from her tablet with new information. "Commander, I found something else," she said. "The historical records mention that Vorthak recognition ceremonies have specific rules. Once they begin the test, they cannot leave until it's completed successfully, or fails completely." "What does that mean?" Rodriguez asked. "It means War Chief Thane and his warriors are stuck here too," Carter said. "They can't abandon their positions until a human either passes their test or proves unworthy of their respect." Morrison felt a cold realization wash over him. The Vorthak were not just testing humans. They were risking their own lives on the outcome. If the station's life support failed, they would die along with everyone else. Tony Martinez looked up from his security monitors with concern. "Commander, I'm seeing movement in the Vorthak formation," he said. "They're not leaving their positions, but they're getting restless. Some of them keep looking at their weapons." Morrison studied the security feed. The Vorthak warriors were still standing in formation, but their body language had changed. They seemed tense, like they were waiting for something that was taking too long. "They're running out of patience," Morrison said. Kate Williams spun around in her chair with alarm. "Commander, the Vorthak communications just spiked," she said. "They're sending urgent messages to their homeworld. I can't translate everything, but I keep hearing words that sound like time limit and failure protocol." Morrison's blood ran cold. Failure protocol. That did not sound good. "Dr. Carter, what happens if we fail their test?" Morrison asked. Carter scrolled through more files, her face growing pale. According to these records, if a species fails the recognition ceremony, the Vorthak consider them unworthy of respect, she said. They become enemies instead of potential allies. And what does that mean practically? Rodriguez asked. Carter's voice was barely a whisper. It means they fight to the death. The security center fell silent except for the hum of struggling life support systems. Morrison could hear his own heartbeat in his ears. If he made the wrong choice, everyone on the station would die. If he made no choice at all, everyone would still die. Pete Johnson appeared on the communication screen. His face was covered in sweat and oil. Commander, I need to ask you something important, Johnson said. If I could get into the hub right now, could you guarantee my safety while I work on the repairs? Morrison looked at the screen showing dozens of Vorthak warriors surrounding the life support controls. No, Morrison said honestly. Those are the most dangerous creatures in known space. I can't guarantee anything. Johnson nodded grimly. That's what I thought. But Commander, someone has to try. We're all going to die anyway if nothing changes. Morrison felt the weight of leadership crushing down on him. Johnson was right. They were out of time and out of options. Someone had to take the risk. How long would you need in the hub? Morrison asked. 20 minutes to reset the main systems, Johnson said, but I'd have to stay there the whole time. If I leave before the reset is complete, everything will crash immediately. 20 minutes alone with the Vorthak. Morrison had seen what those creatures could do to humans, but he had also seen the historical footage of Captain Adams. The Vorthak had not hurt Adams when he took command of the situation. Danny Chen stepped forward from his position by the door. Commander, sir, Danny said. My grandfather told me something else about his commanding officer. He said the man wasn't brave because he wasn't scared. He was brave because he was terrified but did what needed to be done anyway. Morrison looked around the security center one more time. His team was watching him with trust and fear in their eyes. On the screens, he could see the Vorthak growing more restless. The life support indicators showed red warnings across every system. Rodriguez, start evacuation procedures for non-essential personnel, Morrison said. Get as many people into the escape pods as possible. Yes, sir, Rodriguez said. What about the rest of us? Morrison walked to the equipment locker and pulled out a communication device. He clipped it to his uniform and checked that it was working. Martinez, I want you monitoring every security camera in the hub, Morrison said. Williams, keep listening to Vorthak communications. Dr. Carter, stay. On this research, I want to know immediately if anything changes. Where are you going, Commander? Carter asked. Morrison looked at the screen showing War Chief Thane. The alien warrior was still standing in the same position, but his head was turned slightly toward the security center windows, like he was waiting. I'm going to end this, Morrison said. Johnson, get your repair equipment ready. When I give you the signal, you come to the hub immediately. Commander, wait, Rodriguez said. What's your plan? Morrison walked toward the door of the security center. His hands were shaking, but his voice was steady. I'm going to do what Captain Adams did, Morrison said. I'm going to walk into that hub and give War Chief Thane a direct order. What if it doesn't work? Rodriguez asked. Morrison paused at the door and looked back at his team. These people had followed him through 3 years of routine operations. Now they were trusting him with their lives in the most dangerous situation any of them had ever faced. Then we find out what a Vorthak failure protocol looks like, Morrison said. But at least we'll know we tried everything. He opened the door and stepped into the corridor that led to the main hub. Morrison walked down the corridor toward the main hub. His footsteps echoed in the empty hallway. The life support systems wheezed and groaned around him. Warning lights flashed red on every wall panel. Behind him, he could hear Rodriguez coordinating the evacuation over the comm system. Her voice was calm and professional, but Morrison knew she was scared. They all were. The corridor seemed longer than usual. Morrison had walked this path hundreds of times during his 3 years as station commander, but today every step felt like it might be his last. He reached the entrance to the main hub and stopped. Through the transparent doors, he could see the Vorthak warriors standing in their formation. War Chief Thane was in the center, exactly where he had been for the past 8 hours. Morrison pressed his comm device. Security Center, this is Morrison, he said. I'm at the hub entrance. What's the status on life support? Martinez's voice crackled through the speaker. Commander, the main generators are running at critical temperatures. Thompson says we have maybe 90 minutes before complete system failure. 90 minutes. Morrison took a deep breath and opened the doors to the hub. The first thing that hit him was the smell. The Vorthak had a sharp, metallic scent that reminded him of heated steel. The second thing he noticed was the size of the creatures up close. Even the smallest Vorthak warrior was twice his height. War Chief Thane turned his massive head toward Morrison as he entered. The alien's red eyes burned like coals in his scarred face. His armor-plated skin reflected the emergency lighting, making him look like a walking tank. Morrison walked across the hub floor. His boots clicked on the metal deck plates. Every Vorthak warrior turned to watch him, but none of them moved from their positions. He stopped 10 feet in front of War Chief Thane and looked up into the alien's burning eyes. The Vorthak leader was completely still, like a statue waiting to come to life. Morrison's mouth was dry, but his voice was clear when he spoke. War Chief Thane, Morrison said, I am Commander Morrison of this station. You and your warriors need to move away from these controls immediately. We have repair work to do. The hub fell completely silent. Morrison could hear his own heartbeat and the distant hum of failing life support systems. War Chief Thane stared down at him without moving. For a moment, Morrison thought he had failed. The alien showed no reaction at all. Then, slowly, War Chief Thane stepped to the side. The effect was immediate. Every Vorthak warrior in the hub moved back from the central controls. They did not leave the area, but they formed a wide circle around the life support equipment. Their weapons stayed ready, but they were no longer blocking access to the critical systems. Morrison pressed his comm device, hardly believing what had just happened. Johnson, get down here now, Morrison said. Bring your repair equipment. The path is clear. On my way, Commander, Johnson's voice replied. War Chief Thane moved closer to Morrison. When the alien spoke, his voice was deep and rough like grinding stones. Human Morrison, Thane said in broken galactic standard. Your species has proven worthy. The test is complete. Morrison stared up at the massive warrior. Test? For many cycles we have watched your kind, Thane said. Other species negotiate when death approaches. They make bargains. They show fear. But humans give orders even when hope is lost. This is why we respect you. Pete Johnson came running into the hub carrying his repair tools. He stopped short when he saw the circle of Vorthak warriors, but Morrison waved him forward. Get to work, Johnson, Morrison said. You have 90 minutes to save this station. Johnson nodded and ran to the life support controls. The Vorthak warriors watched him work, but they made no move to interfere. If anything, they seemed to be protecting him from any potential interruption. Morrison's comm device crackled with voices from the security center. Commander, this is incredible, Dr. Carter said. The Vorthak are sending celebration messages to their homeworld. They're reporting a successful recognition ceremony. Kate Williams added, the alien communications have completely changed tone. They're using words that translate to worthy allies and command authority confirmed. War Chief Thane looked down at Morrison with something that might have been respect. Human Morrison, your species will be granted command recognition throughout Vorthak space, Thane said. When humans give orders, Vorthak warriors will listen. Morrison felt the weight of those words. Command recognition from the Vorthak would change humanity's position in the galaxy forever. No longer would humans be seen as just another minor species. They would have the backing of the most feared warriors in known space. Why? Morrison asked. Why do the Vorthak respect human command? Thane's scarred face showed what might have been a smile. Because you command without permission. You see what must be done and you order it to happen. You do not wait for others to agree. You do not ask if it is safe. You simply lead. Johnson looked up from his work at the control panels. Sweat dripped from his face, but he was smiling. Commander, the main systems are responding, Johnson said. Life support is stabilizing. The generators are cooling down. We're going to be okay. Relief flooded through Morrison. The station was saved. The 2,000 people living on Kepler-7 would survive. The 3 colonies would get their supplies. War Chief Thane stepped back and signaled to his warriors. The Vorthak began moving toward the hub exits in perfect formation. "Where are you going?" Morrison asked. "Our task is complete," Thane said. "The recognition ceremony is finished. We must report to our fleet commanders that humans have earned command recognition status." Rodriguez's voice came through Morrison's comm device. "Commander, we're getting reports from across the sector. Vorthak fleets are standing down from aggressive positions. They're broadcasting messages about command recognition for humans." Morrison watched as War Chief Thane reached the hub exit. The massive alien turned back one last time. "Human Morrison," Thane said. "You commanded well when others would have hesitated. This is why your species will survive and grow strong in the galaxy." Then the Vorthak were gone, leaving Morrison alone with Johnson and the humming life support systems. Johnson finished his repairs and stood up, wiping oil from his hands. "All systems are green, Commander," Johnson said. "Life support is back to normal. The food production systems are stable. We're in good shape." Morrison activated his comm device to address the entire station. "This is Commander Morrison," he said. "The crisis is over. All systems are operational. The Vorthak have departed peacefully. Stand down from emergency procedures and return to normal operations." Later, in his private office, Morrison wrote his report to Galactic Command. He tried to explain what had happened on Kepler-7, but the words seemed inadequate. How could he describe the moment when the most dangerous creatures in the galaxy stepped aside because a human gave them a direct order? Dr. Carter knocked on his door and entered with a cup of coffee. "Commander, I've been reading more about command recognition," she said. "This is the first time in Vorthak history that they've granted this status to another species. It means that any human in the galaxy can now give orders to Vorthak forces and expect to be obeyed." Morrison leaned back in his chair. The responsibility felt overwhelming. "How do we handle that kind of power?" Morrison asked. Carter smiled. "The same way you handled today. When something needs to be done, you give clear orders and expect people to follow them. The Vorthak recognize that humans have the courage to command when everyone else is afraid to make decisions." Morrison looked out his office window at the stars. Somewhere out there, Vorthak fleets were spreading the news about humanity's new status. The galaxy was about to become a very different place. But for now, Kepler-7 was safe, his crew was alive, and the coffee was hot. Sometimes, Morrison thought, the biggest victories came from the simplest decisions, like knowing when to give an order and expecting it to be followed.